Hi everyone, welcome back to another lesson. We're talking about ganglion cysts in this lesson. These are benign tumors that can occur on the hands and other parts of the body. They are cysts that are filled with a gelatinous mucoid material. We'll discuss all of this in more detail when we talk about the pathophysiology later. Again, they're a benign tumor and they are going to develop near joints and tendons. Again, we'll discuss this in more detail later. And some of the most common places that they will occur include the wrists, as you can see in this image here, the hand, the ankle, foot, and knee. Now, ganglion cysts are the most common hand and wrist soft tissue mass, and they actually represent 60 to 70% of hand and wrist soft tissue masses. They're most common in females between the ages of 20 to 50 years of age, and females outnumber males 3 to 1. And we can often see these particular cysts in certain professions, including gymnasts. We'll discuss the reason why here in a moment. Now, this will lead us into risk factors. Some of the risk factors include repetitive motions, so this explains the reason why we can see it in gymnasts, but we can also see it in athletes and other individuals who are doing something repetitively on their hands or around their wrists. Injury is also another risk factor for getting ganglion cysts, and then we can also see osteoarthritis being another risk factor, especially in older individuals. We'll discuss this later on when we talk about a particular type of ganglion cyst. Now let's talk about the pathophysiology of ganglion cysts. The exact pathophysiology is not known, but it is believed to be due to repetitive microinjuries over time. So it's going to involve these small injuries that are repeated over and over and over again over time that affect a synovial capsular junction, so a joint, a synovial joint specifically. All of these repetitive microinjuries are going to lead to tissue degeneration and degeneration of the connective tissue. So this is the hypothesis. In a joint, this is going to lead to synovial fluid leakage, and this synovial fluid is going to trigger reactive mesenchymal cells. So there'll be cells outside of the joint that get triggered by some of the synovial fluid, and then they will react to produce mucin and glycosaminoglycans, or GAGs. Maybe we'll talk about those in the next slide. So this is a potential pathophysiological mechanism. This is what is hypothesized to happen. In a tendon, it's slightly different. There's not going to be that leakage of synovial fluid, but there can be still those microinjuries that occur in tendons. And that microinjury can lead to a triggering of, again, mesenchymal cells in those areas, leading to the cyst forming. And because of the way that these cysts can form from synovial joints, for instance, we can get a stalk that also forms and connects from the joint to the cyst. So we can get a stalk that connects to the two. And when we look at the cyst itself, inside the cyst contains, again, those glycosaminoglycans, those GAGs that we talked about before, that mucin material. And the largest contributor to the glycosaminoglycans is hyaluronic acid. So inside a cyst is mostly composed of hyaluronic acid. It contains some paucicellular connective tissue as well. And then it's got this layer of collagen fibers and fibrocytes. And because of this, some researchers don't define this as a true cyst because true cysts, by definition, have epithelial lining. So these particular ganglion cysts are lined by collagen fibers and fibrocytes. And then for the most part, these ganglion cysts are going to be multilobulated. So they're going to have partitions in them that cause different lobes. They can be unilobulated in some cases, but most of the time they're going to be multilobulated. So they'll have these pockets that are separated by partitions. Now let's discuss where we can most find these. So we can most often find these in certain parts of the hand. Now, the dorsal hand, or the dorsal wrist more specifically, is going to be the most common location that we find these ganglion cysts. And we're most often going to find them at a certain region of the wrist. And the best way to describe where this is to name a couple of the wrist bones. One is the scaphoid, and the other is the lunate. So a lot of the cysts are going to occur right in between these two bones. Most of the time, most commonly, we're going to get a cyst in that area. So this is where we can see it, right in this area. That's going to be the most common location for ganglion cysts. But we can find them in other parts of the hand, including on the volar aspect. So we can get them pretty close to where we would say the median nerve runs through. And we can also get them at the base of the fingers as well. And not only the hands, but again, we can also get them in the feet and the knees as well. Now, individuals who have ganglion cysts, majority of the time are going to be asymptomatic, meaning that they have no symptoms at all. They just have that big lump. So you can see different ganglion cysts here, one here on the foot, And if we were to describe some of their characteristics, these ganglion cysts are going to be round in shape. They're going to be oftentimes firm. Sometimes they can be soft. It depends on how long they've been there. They're going to be most often painless. So unless you were to really push on them hard, they're not going to be painful, but in some cases they can be. And if you were to really press on them, they can be tender to touch in some cases. And then their size is often going to be anywhere from 10 to 30 millimeters in diameter. Now, those are going to be the uncomplicated cases, but we can have cases where the cyst is in a certain location or it has grown so large as the cyst can change in size over time and get larger. If they start to impinge on other structures, they can start to cause issues. And some of these possible issues include limited range of motion. So if you have one on a finger and it's so large, you might not be able to bend the finger properly. Joint instability. In some cases, it can compress a nerve, leading to paresthesias or numbness, tingling sensations. And then others can lead to weakness. And that can also be related to paresthesias as well. If impinging on nerves, sometimes you can get atrophy of muscles that are supplied by that nerve, and you can have weakness as well. Or you may have weakness due to it impinging on a tendon, for instance. So there's all sorts of different reasons here. Now, another important point to make note of with these cysts is that the skin that overlies the cyst is not going to be altered or changed. So it's unchanged skin. And in other cases, the cyst may be slightly movable. So that's also something to point out here. It may not be, could be pretty fixed, but in some cases it can be movable. Now, a couple of important cases I want to point out here include what we call mucocysts. These are where we have a ganglion cyst on the DIP joint. The DIP joint, if we were to look at this image here, these joints of the hand are the MCP joints. These ones are the PIP joints, or the proximal interphalangeal joints. And the farthest ones on our fingers here are the DIP joints, the distal interphalangeal joints. So in cases where we have a ganglion cyst on or around a DIP joint, we call it a specific name, a mucocyst. And this particular cyst is going to be associated with osteoarthritis. So this will be unusual for younger individuals. It's more common in later life. Some other important points to make note of with regards to mucocysts is that unlike the other cysts where the overlying skin is not changed or altered, the mucocyst can lead to thinning skin over the DIP joint. And in some cases, the cyst can become so large that the nail itself, the nail bed, can be impacted and can lead to nail deformities. So these are two important differences with regards to this particular type of ganglion cyst compared to others. And then we can also see carpal tunnel syndrome in some patients with ganglion cyst. This, again, depends on where that cyst is located. So the median nerve runs through this part of the wrist. So if we were to have a big ganglion cyst here, it could compress on the median nerve, leading to carpal tunnel syndrome, and we're going to get paresthesias, numbing, tingling sensations in the median nerve distribution. The median nerve has an interesting distribution. If you want more information, please check my lesson on carpal tunnel syndrome. But quickly, what will often happen is that there is going to be, if we were to see the palm of the hand, the median nerve distribution will be the thumb, the index finger, the middle finger, and half of the ring finger. The half of the ring finger closest to the middle finger. That will be what has paresthesias, numbness, and tingling sensations. The other half of the ring finger that is closest to the pinky finger and the pinky finger itself, and the other half of the hand will have no numbness and tingling sensations because it's supplied by the ulnar nerve. So that is an interesting distribution of this nerve. So in some cases, again, if you have a big ganglion cyst compressing on the median nerve, you can get this particular distribution of numbness and tingling sensations. Again, thumb, index finger, middle finger, and half of the ring finger closest to the middle finger. Now, how do clinicians diagnose and treat ganglion cysts? Oftentimes it's going to be a clinical diagnosis. If we see a ganglion cyst in one of those parts of the hand, for instance, because it can be a common benign tumor or soft tissue mass on the hand, we can often see clinicians doing a clinical diagnosis, just simply doing a history and physical examination and making the diagnosis that way. One way to help distinguish between ganglion cysts and other types of solid masses is by doing transillumination with light. So essentially taking a pen light, dimming down the lights, putting the light against the ganglion cyst, and because the ganglion cyst is full of fluid, the light will pass through it. But if it's a solid mass, the light will not pass through it. So that's a quick way to assess, is it fluid-filled or is it a solid mass? Ultrasound can also be utilized to help with diagnosis as well in cases where the diagnosis is not clear. And if there's question of any nerve impingement, an MRI can be used to assess for nerve impingement. Once a clinician has made the diagnosis, how do they treat ganglion cysts? So some patients can have a complete resolution of their ganglion cysts without treatment. About 50% of patients will have a complete resolution. So sometimes simply observation. Clinicians will just wait and watch to see what will happen. Other times, if the cyst is small enough and it's in an early stage of growing, there have been cases where compression of the cyst can lead to a rupturing of the cyst and allowing absorption of that fluid. Again, that's going to be in early cases where the cyst wall has not become too thickened. Immobilization has also been noted. This is going to be best in patients with symptoms like numbness and tingling sensations. Aspiration, in some cases, and ultrasound-guided aspiration can be helpful here. And in the case where the cyst hasn't resolved on its own, it's gotten larger, it starts to impinge on structures or cause other issues, causing paresthesias, pain, limited range of motion, surgical removal can be an option here. So open surgery, so a ganglionectomy, removal of the ganglion cyst can be one way. There can be arthroscopic ganglion excision. That can be another way. So some of these can be ways to treat a ganglion cyst. But important to point out here too is that they can recur in the future. So recurrence can be anywhere from 10% up to 40%. So you'll see some numbers after surgery, for instance, some numbers will show that there'll be a 40% recurrence rate. In other cases, you may only see a 10% recurrence rate. So it's anywhere from 10 to 40% recurrence rate in the future. I hope you found this lesson helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe for more lessons like this one. Please also consider joining as a member for members-only content and early access to videos. Thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you next time.